Maya Chen had always been the invisible girl at Jefferson High School. While other students filled the hallways with laughter and chatter, she moved through the corridors like a shadow, her dark hair falling over her face like a protective curtain. Her worn backpack, filled with library books instead of trendy accessories, marked her as different from her peers who carried designer bags and the latest smartphones. The mockery had started in freshman year, and only intensified as she progressed through high school. "There goes the ghost?" Jessica Martinez would whisper loud enough for Maya to hear. "I swear she doesn't even speak English properly." The cruel comments about her quiet nature and her family's modest background had become as regular as the morning announcements. Maya's father worked double shifts at the local auto repair shop, his hands permanently stained with grease and motor oil. Her mother cleaned offices downtown, leaving before dawn and returning after dark. They lived in a small apartment above Mrs. Patterson's bakery on the wrong side of town, where the smell of fresh bread couldn't quite mask the sound of sirens that echoed through the night. At school, Maya found refuge in the library during lunch breaks. Mrs. Henderson, the elderly librarian, never asked questions when Maya appeared with red-rimmed eyes, or when she spent entire afternoons reading in the corner alcove. The books transported her to worlds where being different wasn't a curse, where quiet strength was valued over loud popularity. The bullying reached its peak during senior year. Chad Williams, the star quarterback whose father owned half the businesses in town, seemed to take particular pleasure in making Maya's life miserable. "Hey, charity case," he called out one Tuesday morning as Maya walked past his locker. "Did your mom find those clothes in the dumpster behind her office building?" His girlfriend, Brittany Thompson, giggled as she applied lip gloss with practiced precision. "Maya probably doesn't even know what designer clothes look like. I bet she shops at that thrift store on Maple Street." The crowd of students that had gathered laughed at Brittany's comment, their cruel amusement echoing through the hallway. Maya's cheeks burned with embarrassment, but she kept walking. She had learned that responding only made things worse. The humiliation followed her into first period chemistry, where she sat alone at the back table while other students partnered up for experiments. Even Mr. Rodriguez, the chemistry teacher, seemed to overlook her raised hand during class discussions. During lunch, the harassment continued in the cafeteria. Maya sat at the far end of a table, picking at her homemade sandwich while conversations swirled around her. "I heard her dad fixes cars," someone whispered nearby. "My dad says their family is probably here illegally." The comment wasn't true, but rumors had a way of spreading through the school like wildfire. The afternoon brought no relief. In English class, when Mrs. Parker assigned group projects, Maya found herself as the last person chosen, reluctantly accepted into a group that immediately assigned her all the research work. "You're good at that quiet, boring stuff anyway," one of her group members said dismissively. After school, Maya walked home alone while other students climbed into cars or gathered in groups outside the building. The October air was crisp, and fallen leaves crunched under her feet as she made her way through the residential neighborhoods. She passed houses with perfectly manicured lawns and expensive cars in the driveways, symbols of a life that seemed forever out of reach. At home, Maya helped her mother prepare dinner in their small kitchen. "How was school today, Mija?" her mother asked in accented English, her voice tired from another long day of cleaning. Maya forced a smile and replied, "It was fine, Mama, just the usual." She had stopped sharing the details of her daily humiliation long ago, not wanting to add to her parents' burdens. That evening, while completing homework at the kitchen table, Maya received a text message on her old flip phone. The number was unknown, but the message was clear. "Nobody wants you here. Why don't you just disappear?" She stared at the glowing screen, feeling the familiar knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. The next morning brought more of the same treatment. During chemistry class, Chad deliberately knocked over Maya's beaker, causing her experiment to fail. "Oops," he said with mock concern. "Looks like the quiet girl made another mistake." Mr. Rodriguez sighed and told Maya she would have to stay after school to redo the experiment, missing her bus and forcing her to walk home in the rain. In the hallway between classes, Brittany and her friends cornered Maya near her locker. "We're having a party this weekend," Brittany announced with false sweetness. "Everyone's invited." "Well, Everyone who matters. The implication was clear. And the girls walked away, laughing at their own cruelty. Maya's isolation felt complete when even the few friendly acquaintances she had began to distance themselves. Emma Rodriguez, who had occasionally shared notes with Maya in history class, started sitting on the opposite side of the room. The social pressure to avoid association with the school's outcast was too strong to resist. The breaking point came on a Friday afternoon in late October. Maya was gathering books from her locker when Chad and several of his friends approached. "Hey, ghost girl," Chad said loudly, attracting the attention of students throughout the hallway. "I heard your family might be moving soon." Something about not being able to afford rent? The lie stung because it contained just enough truth to be believable. "Maybe she should move back to wherever she came from," added Tyler Morrison, Chad's best friend. "This town would be better without her kind." The racist undertone wasn't lost on anyone present, but no teacher intervened, and no student spoke up in Maya's defense. As Maya closed her locker and hurried toward the exit, she could hear the laughter following her down the hallway. The shame and anger burned in her chest as she pushed through the school's front doors and stepped into the crisp autumn air. She had endured 3.5 years of this treatment, and graduation couldn't come soon enough. Walking home that afternoon, Maya made a decision. She would apply to colleges far away from this town, far from these people who had made her feel worthless. She had good grades despite everything, and she had been quietly preparing for SATs and college applications. Education would be her escape route, her path to a different life. That weekend, while other students attended parties and social gatherings, Maya worked on scholarship applications and college essays. She wrote about overcoming adversity, about finding strength in solitude, about the power of persistence in the face of cruelty. The words flowed from her pen like water from a dam, years of suppressed emotions finally finding expression. Unknown to her classmates, Maya had been nurturing something special during her years of isolation. Her hours in the library hadn't just been about hiding from bullies. She had been teaching herself programming languages, studying international relations, and developing skills that would serve her well beyond the confines of Jefferson High School. As Monday morning approached, Maya prepared herself for another week of enduring the same treatment. She had no way of knowing that her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined, that her quiet strength and hidden talents would soon be revealed in the most dramatic fashion possible. Monday morning arrived with an unexpected twist that would change everything at Jefferson High School. Maya entered the building as she always did, quietly and unnoticed, but today felt different in ways she couldn't quite explain. The usual morning chaos filled the hallways, but there was an undercurrent of excitement that seemed to electrify the air. In first period chemistry, Mr. Rodriguez made an unusual announcement. "Class, we have a special visitor today from the State Department's Educational Outreach Program. They're here to observe our advanced students and potentially offer some exciting opportunities." Maya looked up from her notebook, intrigued despite herself. She had read about government programs that identified talented students for special internships and scholarships. The visitor, a woman in a crisp navy suit who introduced herself as Miss Patricia Wells, moved quietly around the classroom, observing students as they worked on their lab assignments. When she paused at Maya's station and watched her methodical approach to the complex chemical analysis, Maya felt self-conscious but continued working with her usual precision. "Interesting technique," Miss Wells commented quietly. "Where did you learn to approach problem-solving this way?" Maya looked up, surprised to be addressed directly. "I read a lot about different methodologies," she replied softly. "I find that systematic approaches often reveal patterns others miss." Miss Wells nodded thoughtfully and made a note on her clipboard before moving on. During lunch, Maya retreated to her usual spot in the library when Mrs. Henderson approached with an unexpected message. "Maya, dear, there are some people in the main office who would like to speak with you. Nothing to worry about. They seem very professional." Maya's stomach dropped, wondering if somehow her family's immigration status was being questioned, despite being American citizens for over a decade. Walking to the main office, Maya noticed several black SUVs parked in the visitor spaces. their tinted windows and government plates suggesting something far more serious than a routine school visit. Principal Davidson greeted her with unusual warmth and guided her to the conference room, where Miss Wells waited along with two other individuals in similar professional attire. "Maya," Miss Wells began, her voice kind but serious. "We've been reviewing your academic records and some work you submitted to various online academic competitions. Your essays on international cybersecurity and your solutions to complex mathematical problems have caught the attention of some very important people in Washington." Maya's confusion must have shown on her face because the man sitting next to Miss Wells, who introduced himself as Director James Morrison, leaned forward with a slight smile. "Maya, we know this must be overwhelming, but we represent a special government program that identifies exceptional young people with unique talents. Your work, particularly your analysis of global communication patterns and your innovative approaches to data encryption, has impressed some very senior officials." The woman at the end of the table, Dr. Sarah Kim, opened a folder and spread several papers across the surface. "These are essays and problem solutions you submitted to various academic competitions over the past 2 years. What you accomplished while maintaining perfect grades and dealing with challenging personal circumstances is remarkable. Most graduate students couldn't handle the complexity of the work you've been doing independently." Maya stared at the papers, recognizing her own work but seeing it through new eyes. She had submitted those pieces to online competitions and academic forums, never imagining they would be noticed by government officials. "I don't understand," she said quietly. "I was just interested in the problems. I enjoyed solving them." Director Morrison exchanged glances with his colleagues before continuing. "Maya, we'd like to offer you an opportunity that very few people your age ever receive. There's a special program for gifted individuals who show exceptional promise in areas critical to national security. It involves advanced training, mentorship with leading experts, and eventually, opportunities to serve your country in ways that make a real difference." The room fell silent as Maya processed this information. The contrast with her daily reality at school was so stark that she wondered if she was dreaming. Just hours ago, she had been enduring the usual mockery from her classmates, and now government officials were telling her she had exceptional abilities. What would this mean for finishing high school? Maya asked, her practical nature asserting itself despite the surreal circumstances. Dr. Kim smiled and explained. "You would complete your education through an accelerated program while beginning your training. Your academic needs would be fully supported, and you'd graduate with credentials that open doors to the finest universities in the country." As the meeting continued, Maya learned that her online academic work had been monitored for months by a specialized team that identified promising young talent. Her approaches to complex problems had demonstrated not just intelligence, but the kind of innovative thinking that government agencies desperately needed in an increasingly complex world. Meanwhile, back in the regular school day, rumors began circulating about the mysterious government visitors and Maya's prolonged absence from classes. Chad Williams, who had been looking forward to his usual afternoon torment session, was annoyed that his favorite target seemed to have vanished. "Where's the ghost girl?" He asked Brittany during fifth period. "I had some new material to try out on her." Jessica Martinez, who had overheard part of a conversation between two teachers, spread word that Maya was in some kind of trouble with government officials. "I told you her family was probably here illegally," she whispered to anyone who would listen. "They're probably getting deported right now." The cruel satisfaction in her voice was evident as she imagined Maya's supposed downfall. In the conference room, Maya was grappling with the biggest decision of her life. The officials had explained that accepting their offer would mean leaving Jefferson High School immediately and beginning an intensive training program that would challenge her in ways she had never imagined. It would also mean leaving her parents, though they would be provided with detailed information and assurances about her well-being. "I need to talk to my parents," Maya said finally. "This is too big a decision to make without them." Miss Wells nodded approvingly. "Of course. We've already contacted them and arranged to meet with your family this evening. They're as surprised as you are, but they're also very proud of what you've accomplished." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur as Maya returned to classes, her mind reeling from the morning's revelations. Her classmates noticed her distraction but attributed it to whatever trouble they assumed she was in. During final period, word had spread throughout the school that Maya Chen was being investigated by federal agents, and the rumors grew more elaborate with each telling. That evening, Maya sat with her parents in their small living room as Miss Wells and Director Morrison explained the program in detail. Her father's hands, still bearing traces of motor oil despite thorough washing, trembled slightly as he held the official documents. Her mother wept quietly, overwhelmed by pride and fear in equal measure. "Mija," her father said in Spanish, then switched to English for the official's benefit. "We always knew you were special. But this is beyond anything we dreamed." Her mother nodded, struggling to find words. "Will she be safe? Will we be able to see her?" The officials provided detailed assurances about communication protocols and family visits, though they emphasized that the program required significant commitment and discretion. The decision had to be made quickly. If Maya accepted, she would leave within 48 hours for the first phase of her training. If she declined, the opportunity would not come again, and she would return to her regular life at Jefferson High School, with no one the wiser about what she had turned down. As the family discussed the opportunity late into the night, Maya thought about her daily reality at school, the constant mockery and isolation she endured, but she also thought about her dreams of making a difference in the world, of using her abilities to solve important problems and help people. The choice, when framed that way, wasn't really a choice at all. Tuesday morning arrived with Maya's decision made but not yet announced. She went through her classes one final time, observing her classmates with new perspective. Chad's cruel comments seemed petty and insignificant now. Brittany's shallow concerns about popularity and status felt like remnants of a world Maya was already leaving behind. During lunch, Maya sat in the library for the last time, thanking Mrs. Henderson for her kindness over the years. The elderly librarian seemed to sense something significant was happening and hugged Maya warmly. "Whatever path you choose, dear," she whispered, "I know you'll do remarkable things. You have a strength that most people never develop." The final afternoon at Jefferson High School felt surreal as Maya watched her classmates go through their familiar routines, unaware that someone they had dismissed and mocked was about to embark on an extraordinary journey. As the final bell rang and students rushed toward their lockers and after-school activities, Maya made her way to the main office one last time. Miss Wells was waiting with the final paperwork and travel arrangements. "Are you ready for this, Maya?" she asked. Maya nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness that reminded her why she had always been drawn to challenging problems. This was simply the biggest problem she had ever chosen to solve. That evening, as Maya packed her few belongings and said goodbye to the small apartment that had been home, she reflected on how dramatically life could change. Tomorrow, she would begin a journey that would test every ability she possessed and reveal capabilities she didn't know she had. Her classmates would never know what they had truly lost when they chose cruelty over kindness. 6 months later, Jefferson High School had settled into its familiar rhythm without Maya Chen. Most students had forgotten about the quiet girl who had simply disappeared one day, though rumors occasionally surfaced about her mysterious departure. Chad Williams had found new targets for his cruelty, and Brittany Thompson continued her reign as the most popular girl in school, unbothered by the absence of someone she had never considered important. The spring morning started like any other, with students gathering in small groups before first period, gossiping about weekend parties and upcoming prom plans. The weather was unusually warm for early May, and classroom windows were thrown open to let in the fresh air. Nothing seemed different about this particular Wednesday until the sound began to echo across the campus. At first, it was barely perceptible. A distant rhythmic thumping that could have been construction work or traffic from the nearby highway. But as the sound grew louder and more distinct, heads began to turn skyward. The unmistakable whop-whop-whop of helicopter rotors filled the air, growing more intense with each passing second. Mrs. Patterson in the front office was the first to spot it through her window, a black military helicopter approaching the school at low altitude. She immediately called Principal Davidson, who rushed outside to see what was happening. Other staff members joined him, their faces showing concern and confusion as the aircraft circled the school building once before beginning its descent toward the football field. Students pressed against classroom windows, their morning lessons forgotten as they watched the dramatic scene unfold. The helicopter was unlike anything they had seen before. Sleek, black, and bearing military markings that suggested this was no ordinary aircraft. As it touched down on the 50-yard line, the rotor wash sent debris flying and forced everyone to step back from the windows. Mr. Rodriguez tried to maintain order in his chemistry class, but his students were transfixed by the sight outside. "Everyone sit down and focus on today's lesson," he commanded. But even he couldn't resist glancing toward the field where the helicopter had landed. The aircraft's engines continued running, indicating this would be a brief stop rather than a prolonged visit. From the helicopter emerged 4 figures in military dress uniforms, their bearing and movement suggesting high rank and important purpose. They were met by Principal Davidson and several school security guards, who had been as surprised as everyone else by this unexpected arrival. A brief conversation ensued, with the principal nodding repeatedly and gesturing toward the main building. Inside the school, an announcement crackled over the intercom system. "Attention students and staff. Please remain in your current locations while we address a special situation. All classes will continue as scheduled." The announcement did little to calm the growing excitement and speculation that rippled through every hallway and classroom. Chad Williams, who was supposed to be in English class, had instead positioned himself near a side door where he could get a better view of the action. "This is probably some kind of military recruitment thing," he told Tyler Morrison, though his voice carried a note of uncertainty. "Maybe they're looking for football players or something." His usual confidence seemed shaken by the unprecedented nature of the situation. The military personnel entered the main building with purposeful strides, their polished boots echoing through the hallways. Students and teachers alike stared openly as the group made its way directly to the main office, where Principal Davidson had prepared the conference room for whatever business required such dramatic transportation. What happened in that conference room over the next 30 minutes would become the subject of endless speculation among the school community. Principal Davidson later described it as the most extraordinary meeting of his career, involving classified information and arrangements that he was sworn never to discuss in detail. All he would say was that it concerned a former student who had achieved something remarkable in service to their country. Meanwhile, the helicopter remained on the football field, its crew maintaining readiness for immediate departure. Coach Martinez, who had been forced to cancel football practice due to the aircraft's presence, stood at the field's edge, marveling at the sophisticated machinery. "In 30 years of coaching," he told his assistant, "I've never seen anything like this at a high school." As the meeting in the conference room concluded, the military personnel emerged with a sense of satisfied completion. They were accompanied by Principal Davidson, who carried a small package and wore an expression of profound amazement. The group made their way back toward the helicopter, passing curious students and staff who lined the hallways for a glimpse of whatever was happening. The departure was as dramatic as the arrival. The helicopter's engines spun up to full power, creating a thunderous roar that could be heard throughout the building. Students pressed against windows once again as the aircraft lifted off, banking sharply to the west before disappearing into the distance. Within minutes, the only evidence of its visit was the disturbed grass on the football field and the lingering smell of jet fuel. Principal Davidson called an immediate assembly for all students and staff. The gymnasium filled quickly, buzzing with excited conversations and wild theories about what they had just witnessed. When the principal took the microphone, the crowd fell silent, eager for answers to the mystery that had disrupted their ordinary day. "Students and faculty," Principal Davidson began, his voice carrying an emotion that few had ever heard from him. "What you witnessed today was the conclusion of one of the most remarkable stories in our school's history. 6 months ago, a student left Jefferson High School to serve our country in a capacity that I cannot fully describe due to security considerations." The crowd murmured with growing interest. Some students were beginning to piece together the timeline, remembering Maya Chen's sudden disappearance and wondering if there could be a connection. Chad Williams felt a strange uneasiness in his stomach, though he couldn't yet understand why. Principal Davidson continued, "That student has just been awarded one of our nation's highest honors for service to the United States. The ceremony I have just witnessed, and the recognition that was presented, represents achievement at the very highest levels of government service. He paused, letting the magnitude of his words sink in before continuing. The student I'm referring to is Maya Chen, who many of you remember as a quiet, dedicated member of our school community. The gymnasium erupted in shocked whispers and gasps. Students who had dismissed Maya as insignificant now found themselves trying to reconcile their memories with this extraordinary revelation. Chad Williams felt the blood drain from his face as the principal's words hit him like a physical blow. Images flashed through his mind of every cruel comment, every moment of mockery he had directed toward Maya. Beside him, Brittany Thompson had gone equally pale, her hand covering her mouth in shock. Maya's work, Principal Davidson continued, involved preventing a significant threat to national security through her exceptional analytical abilities and dedication to protecting American citizens. The details must remain classified, but I can tell you that her contributions have been recognized at the highest levels of government, including the White House. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembled crowd. Teachers, who had overlooked Maya's raised hand in class discussions, now felt ashamed of their oversight. Students who had participated in her social exclusion began to understand the magnitude of their misjudgment. The quiet girl they had dismissed and mocked had been protecting the very country they all called home. Mrs. Henderson, the librarian who had always been kind to Maya, wiped tears from her eyes as she listened to the principal's words. She had known there was something special about the girl who spent so many hours reading in her library, but even she had never imagined Maya would achieve something of this magnitude. Furthermore, Principal Davidson announced, Maya has requested that a scholarship be established in our school's name to support students who demonstrate exceptional academic ability regardless of their economic circumstances. She specifically wanted to ensure that future students would have opportunities she had to fight for. The irony was not lost on anyone present. Maya Chen, who had been treated as worthless by many of her peers, was now providing opportunities for future students who might face similar challenges. Her generosity toward a school community that had failed to recognize her value spoke to a character that transcended the petty cruelties she had endured. As the assembly dispersed, conversations continued in hushed, amazed tones throughout the hallways. Students who had participated in Maya's torment found themselves grappling with guilt and regret. Chad Williams walked to his locker in stunned silence, finally understanding that he had spent years mocking someone whose intelligence and patriotism far exceeded anything he could hope to achieve. In the days that followed, Jefferson High School became a different place. The dramatic helicopter visit and the revelation about Maya Chen sparked conversations about how the school community treated students who didn't fit conventional social molds. Some students began reaching out to classmates they had previously ignored, while others reflected privately on their own behavior and choices. The story of Maya Chen spread far beyond the walls of Jefferson High School. Local news stations picked up the story of the quiet student who had risen to national prominence, though details remained appropriately classified. The school became known as the place where a true American hero had been educated, though many who had known Maya personally wished they could have recognized her potential while she was still among them. Maya's parents, who had watched their daughter leave with a mixture of pride and terror, finally understood the full magnitude of their daughter's service when federal officials visited them with commendations and assurances about her continued safety. Their small apartment above Mrs. Patterson's bakery became a symbol of the American dream realized through education, determination, and quiet strength. For Maya Chen, wherever her service had taken her, the validation was complete. The girl who had walked through Jefferson High School's hallways feeling invisible and worthless had proven that true value often goes unrecognized until it matters most. Her story became a legend that would inspire future students to look beyond surface appearances and recognize the potential that exists in every quiet corner of their school community. The helicopter's departure had marked not just the end of a mysterious visit, but the beginning of a new understanding about the power of persistence, the importance of kindness, and the truth that real strength often comes in the quietest packages.